Hello, N4H&H here. I want to talk about signal-to-noise ratio. I had someone comment that I need to read the manual on my radios because I wasn't using AMP 1, I was using IPO. And, I want to explain signal-to-noise ratio. They said, look at your S meter. You can tell by your S meter, in other words, that you're not doing a proper signal-to-noise ratio. So let me explain signal-to-noise ratio. First of all, if you've been on my channel long enough, you know I'm not an S meter watcher. S meters are relative. That's about as good as you can expect from an S meter. They're not truly calibrated the way the IARU wanted them to be. The idea was that one S unit equals 6 dB change in volume, your auditory response, how you hear it, increase or decrease. But the S meters are not calibrated exactly to 6 decibels per S unit. The manufacturers just have not gotten there. So, for example, on this radio, the FTDX 5000, S9 is technically 2 decibels over S9. From 9 to 60, it's off by 2 dB. Okay, at least I know just to add 2 to whatever it says. Now, between S1 is accurate, but between 2 and 9, it's off. It reads low. So you just got to look at an S meter as something that's relative. I'll get more into that in a minute. First of all, I want to take advantage of the fact that we have this weaker CW station, so I want you to listen to it a minute. Now, I am using digital noise reduction. Let me turn that off. Now, I'm going to engage using my DSP. I'm not going to pan over there. You've seen many videos on this radio. 50 hertz bandwidth. Watch the S meter. See it drop? And now I'm going to turn on the audio peak filter. And now I'm going to turn on digital noise reduction, and I've got it maxed out. Now, when you do all that, you need to increase the volume, okay? But listen to that. He's not even moving the meter. That's a proper signal-to-noise ratio. Now, I'm going to undo all that, starting with digital noise reduction. See, already some of the noise is creeping back in. Now I'm going to undo the audio peak filter. And now I will undo my digital filter that's down at 50 hertz. And so for those of you, by the way, who are shopping and wondering, should I get a 300 hertz roofing filter or just go with a default 500, 600, what have you, the digital narrows it down less than those anyway, but it is good to have maybe a 500 or a 600 roofing filter, the physical filter, ahead of the DSP. That's where it is, because it does assist the DSP somewhat, but the digital is quite good, and I'll show you an example of that. I'll pan over there. So now the digital filter and the roofing filter are equal. So that's what it would sound like with a 300 hertz roofing filter only. In fact, let me turn it off. There's just the mechanical 300 hertz filter. The digital helps it a little bit, even though it's set at 300, but that is a 300 hertz bandwidth digitally and also from the roofing filter. I'm going to force my roofing filter to 600. And let's say you buy a radio that's got a 500 hertz roofing filter. That's what you're going to get before you use DSP. Now, I'll go turn that off again. There's what it sounds like with a 600 hertz roofing filter by itself. If you purchase a FTDX 101, for example, it's going to come with a 600 hertz roofing filter and the option to add a 300 hertz roofing filter in there. And you have to order it that way from Yaesu. They have to solder it in. Now, the FTDX 101 MP, the 200 watt version, will come with also a 300 hertz roofing filter. How necessary is that? Well, even at 600, let's hear what happens when I narrow down to 50. I'm using a 600 hertz crystal roofing filter. He's fading a little bit, but while he's there, I'm going to switch it over to the 300. I'm toggling back and forth. You tell me, do you hear a difference? It's ever so slight. I mean, this guy's almost a ghost signal. So now, that's 50 hertz bandwidth, audio peak filter enabled. It makes a huge difference, doesn't it? And now, here comes DNR, digital noise reduction. At algorithm 15, you got 1 through 15. Now listen, he's not even moving the meter. Let's see what he sounds like without any of the help. Now back to signal to noise ratio. Those of you who are S meter watchers, look at the S meter now. Let me pan over. Oh, he's hitting 3. And I do have amp 1 enabled. I don't tend to run the preamp, amp 1 or 2, on 40 meters and below, except maybe on CW, and I generally don't even use it for CW when I get to 80 and 160, or even 60 meters. Generally, 60, 80, and 160, I do not use a preamp even for CW. But when you narrow it way down here, sometimes the amp does help when it's a ghost station. But other than that, I would generally run IPO. But look at the S meter, and now you tell me which sounds better. Here we go. Audio peak filter, bandpass 50, digital noise reduction. So do you want to go for S meter readings, or do you want to go for signal to noise ratio? So again, let me clear up what is signal to noise ratio. The comment that was made on my page made it sound like, oh, well, look at your S meter. Your signal to noise ratio is not proper. Well, signal to noise ratio doesn't mean I'm getting the highest meter reading. It does not mean my S meter is deflecting to the highest amount. That is not signal to noise ratio. Signal to noise ratio is knocking the noise down and improving the way the signal sounds. Basically, I'm driving a wedge between the two. I'm bringing the signal up and knocking the noise down. Now, why is that possible? That's because we don't hear in a linear fashion. Our hearing is logarithmic. And let me give you an example of that. On a car stereo, you may have a button that says loudness, and a lot of people don't understand what that's for. That does not mean that you want to make everything louder. But people will use it for that. And certainly if you're already listening at a loud volume and you press the loudness button, it is going to get a little louder, perceptibly louder, because what it's doing is boosting the frequencies in your hearing that fall off at lower volume. So what a loudness control is really for is when you're listening at a lower volume level. Let's say, you're driving down the road, you got other people in the car, you're having a conversation, but you want music in the background. At a lower volume level so that you can carry on a conversation, your hearing tapers off on the ends. You hear the mid frequencies better at lower volumes. And again, that's because our hearing is not linear. Our hearing is logarithmic. And therefore, taking advantage of that. Think of it this way. Our Creator made us this way. I don't know if he looked into the future and said, well, there's going to be, ham radio, and I want to help these folks out with signal to noise ratio by giving them logarithmic hearing. I don't know, but here's the deal. When you lower when you work the noise the way I've taught on my channel here from the front end in, and on this radio you can see it is in order of, attenuation, then the if your radio has one, a pre-selector, then your preamps or not, then your roofing filters, and then your automatic gain control. That's the order that the signal passes through. That's the signal chain. If you work that noise from the first stages in and get that noise floor down, you'll improve your signal to noise ratio because, and here's the key to the logarithmic aspect of it, you're going to push the noise down more than you're going to push the signal down. Again, it's because of the logarithmic curve of our hearing. And so take advantage of that. That's why we have this option to improve our signal to noise ratio. So again, signal to noise ratio doesn't mean that you get the highest S meter reading. It means that you have the biggest gap between the noise floor and what you're listening to, be it CW or voice. So that's what we mean when we say signal to noise ratio. Forget the S meters, they're relative. Okay, so where would an S meter come in handy? Somebody asks you, hey, can you tell a difference when I switch antennas? Okay, let's say that they're showing 5 on your meter, and then when they switch antennas, they go to a 7. Now, that doesn't mean that it's exactly a 12 dB increase in their signal, because the S meters are generally not exactly calibrated like the IARU designated. They are not generally 6 decibels per S unit. So you can't go by that. All you can say is, well, you increased 2 S units on my radio. Doesn't mean that it went 12 dB, because it probably didn't. Some of the radios are 3 dB per S unit. Some are 4, 4.5, 5. And in fact, on this radio, it varies even as the scale goes up and down. S1 is accurate. 2 through 9 read low, and then 9 through 60 decibels over 9 reads 2 dBs low. So you just can't go by that. Now, if somebody asked me to give them a signal reading, I will turn off I'll turn on the amp, because that's where it's calibrated, and then I'll give them a reading. Let me give an example of that. See if there's a QSO going on here. Yeah, there we go. So you see here on 80 meters, sideband, I've got 12 dB of attenuation, and I'm running IPO1. IPO, intercept point optimization. It's Yaesu speak for don't run a preamp. Don't use a preamp. Now the radio has 2 preamps, amp 1, amp 2, then IPO 1, and it even has a second level of intercept point optimization. And I've talked about intercept point optimization in previous videos. You can get the lowdown on that, but in a nutshell, real quick, the intercept point is where the signal coming off the antenna meets the first intermediate frequency stage, and there's an amplifier there that is optional. You can turn it on or off. In older radios, you could not, but we didn't have the FET technology, the field effect transistors that are used in our receivers now. They weren't as sensitive back then. So because our receivers are so sensitive, when we get down on these lower bands, we don't really need that amplifier to boost what's coming in off the antenna. So in Yaesu speak, turning off your RF amplifier, these amp 1 or 2, means IPO, intercept point optimization. It just means I want to optimize the intercept point for, get this, signal to noise ratio. That's what you're really doing. So I'm turning off my RF amplifier, my preamps, as they're called in some radios. Now, why would I do that? Let me turn all this off. Look at that noise. Now there's somebody down in there in the weeds. So I'm going to attack this noise from the front end. Now I'll increase my volume to make up for that. See, look, if I'm an S meter watcher, there he is, there's a 9, but I haven't improved my signal to noise ratio. Listen. When he talks again, I'll attenuate. Now, see, if I wanted to give this guy here an S meter reading that's accurate, that's my friend Jack, actually. He's a great guy, W4TWX. If he wanted an S meter reading, I'd say, well, Jack, my S meter's off a little bit, but you're hitting 15 on mine right now. I would have to have no attenuation and amp 1 enabled, because they actually calibrate, if you want to call it that, the S meters with a preamp turned on, preamp 1. or amp 1 as it's called in Jesus. Now, I'm going to attenuate, IPO, turn the volume up. And now I have improved the signal-to-noise ratio on that weaker station. And on the stronger station, I won't have to hear that grind in between syllables. So again, it's to our advantage that our Creator chose to give us hearing that is logarithmic. And by the way, you know, the S meter reading, an S1, S2, S3, each of those S units, if the S meters were accurate, again, the IARU meant for S meters to be 6 decibels per S unit because it takes 6 decibels for the average person's hearing to detect a change in volume, up or down. But it just doesn't translate over to the S meters. The manufacturers just don't get it accurate. So use the S meter as a relative tool, but not as gospel, okay? It's not the gospel truth about what their signal is. I do know with my radio that S9 is really 2 dB over 9. So if somebody's hitting S9, I can reliably say, well, you're 2 dB over S9. If they're hitting 20 over 9, I can say, well, you're 22 dB over 9, because I know that from 9 to 60 on this radio is 2 dB low. But between 1 and 9, it reads very low. Between 3 to 5 decibels low. It even changes from S unit to S unit. So S meters are relative. It doesn't matter what radio you have. I mean, maybe the Flex, I've heard the Flex's S meter is perfect. Maybe somebody can comment and tell me if they believe that's true. I have not proven or disproven that. But listen to that guy. Now, I'm going to turn off the attenuation. And I'm going to turn the preamp on, or amp 1. Now, do you want to hear that grind in the background in between his syllables?
Redone. Well, the guy that did the tile work in the shower.
That is proper signal-to-noise ratio. So, again, signal-to-noise ratio has nothing to do with the S meter, other than the fact that, what's this? I will, let me get off on a frequency where no one's talking. And again, what I'm about to show you can do by ear. But you see, I've got 5 S units of just atmospheric noise. And there's a little something in there man-made sound like too. All right, so I'm working my noise floor from the front end. I'm trying to achieve an S0, but again, you could almost do this by ear. That didn't do it. 12 dB of attenuation got me close, and now IPO1. And my S meter's resting at 0. So there you go. There's the usefulness of an S meter. But again, I could do that by ear just by going, yeah, that's knocked it way down. I got to turn the volume all the way up to hear that. So now let's go back where the conversation is. He's just wiggling the S meter up off 0, but he sounds great.
My daughter was calling me to remind me.
Now here's that strong signal. What's this?
Take my shot. Well, go ahead right now, shot, so you'll be happy. It's in the refrigerator. I have to take it out and let it.
Now I do have digital noise reduction on. Here's digital noise reduction turned off.
Do you give it to yourself? Yeah, I do. Man, I wouldn't do that myself.
Now,
I'd get too afraid.
Attenuation at 12.
No, ain't nothing to it. Just like taking an instant.
IPO1.
You just roll up some of your fat on your stomach and stick it in there. You don't never even feel it.
Never know what you're going to hear on this channel or this frequency.
I have an injection I do.
Now, here comes digital noise reduction.
What is it? Stellara. What's it for?
No digital noise reduction.
Okay. What is psoriasis? You know, it's when you have red
digital noise reduction.
Skin, and sometimes it looks horrible because there's so much of it.
Now, one other point. When you work that noise from the front end in, you're actually going to help your digital noise reduction. If you have a radio that has that, you're actually going to help it do a better job. It does a better job at a lower algorithm. I'm running algorithm 3 There are 1 through 15. Let me show you.
I have no signs of it now.
So I'm on algorithm 3. Each number increases the aggressiveness of the digital noise reduction circuit.
That I had one of my students' mothers.
Now, if I did not attenuate
Covered with it.
and I had my preamp on,
It looked horrible, and I'm sure she hated it. But I hope that she has found, a biological to help her with that, because
hear the noise?
Now, thank goodness.
I'll have to run a more aggressive algorithm
I didn't understand.
to knock the noise down. Now that at this high of a setting, the maximum 15, it's gonna start attenuating the high frequencies out of their voice. So listen to that.
And now this medication doesn't really help.
Not terrible,
But I only
but
have about
let's see if we can get away with maybe a 5
a year.
by attenuating
Gets me to a point like
and IPO1.
it gets inflamed and it's hard to walk, or a toe.
See, 5 does a good job.
Happens about
I'm
once
not
a
taking
year.
all the highs out of their voice, or I'm not diminishing some of the highs from their voice,
Rejection. Your
because I've helped the digital noise reduction by lowering the noise floor as it entered the radio. One other thing you can do is RF gain. Greatest invention for radios, I believe. Let me scan back over here so you can see this.
Well, you see
I'm
people
going
out
to
take this
turn off
shot at
attenuation, turn off IPO. I'm back on amp 1.
Unfortunately, she
Now I'm going
moved down
to
to,
counterclockwise. I'm
3.3
rotating my
or
RF gain control. It's right
but,
here.
Yeah, she's been doing that since she was young.
And the S meter goes up when you do that. See, it's almost like an S meter squelch. Think of it that way. So what you're saying to the radio is, if the signal's not higher than wherever I set my S meter, I don't want to hear it. It's not a brick wall. You'll still hear some. But listen to the noise floor now in between his words.
And my problem was the insurance company didn't want to go along with it. And so as a result of battling that for over a year,
And just so we're clear, the noise is there.
had to have a stent put
But
in
I've
my
lowered the
artery,
sensitivity
and I had to
through the
stroke
RF
that
gain
guy.
control.
And I had this medicine
where,
long before. These
Hey,
things would
if
not
their
have
signals are
happened
super
to me.
strong, you
I
don't
was
need to
taking
have
these
that
statin
sensitivity.
medicine, and the doctor says, no way. Had one my heart doctor said, no way, you stop that stuff right now. My primary doctor
Now,
said, well, you've got
if
to
I
have
turn the
something.
RF gain all the way back
So
up,
I just quit taking them thing altogether, and I've suffered.
He's a
these
strong
things.
signal, so
But
he's
these
masking the
shots have
noise.
been a miracle to me. Been
But
a
listen to it
miracle
when he's
drug
not
to me.
talking. There we go. See?
So far, it's, I think I've been, this is either the fourth or fifth
So that guy's
year.
hitting a 7 and an 8, so I'll rotate
it's still
counterclockwise.
Just as effective as it was when I started it, so I'm glad of that. Hey,
There.
I've got a call
Now my
coming.
RF gain's on an 8.
Okay.
But I lowered the noise floor. I can still hear him. Again, what did I do there? I improved my signal to noise ratio. Has nothing to do with the S meter really, other than the fact that I was just watching the S meter climb as I rotated the RF gain control to indicate where I've got my RF gain set. And it's relative. But you can accomplish the same thing similarly. And you're protecting the front end of your receiver a little bit more. And you don't even touch the RF gain, simply by attenuation and intercept point optimization. Okay, so I hope you found the video helpful and informative. And again, I want to thank my Patreons for helping me keep the channel going. Your support is just unbelievable. So much appreciated. If you'd like to become a Patreon, please do. I'll put the address here in the video. It's patreon.com/N4HNH. And, any amount at all helps. It's a monthly donation, and I would certainly appreciate it. It helps motivate me to keep doing videos like this. If you like this type of content, real-world operating tips, then please consider supporting the channel as a Patreon. At least, if you will, like the video and subscribe. That gives us a little better ranking there with the YouTube folks. And, of course, if you'll click the bell, you'll be notified when I upload the next video. So thanks again for watching in 73 from N4HNH.